You need to step back now. The command landed without hesitation, without a question, a judgment pronounced at 36,000 feet, as if altitude sharpened its edges. Nicole Foster, the lead flight attendant on Horizon Airlines Flight 173, planted herself like a gatekeeper in the first-class aisle, stare fixed on the man who had just lowered himself into seat 2A, her voice not a whisper but a public blade meant to cut the cabin into witnesses and accused, and the cabin heard it.
A heavy hush that drooped like the breath before a storm, the pause the world takes when lightning is deciding where to strike. Marcus Carter, silent and steady, did not flinch. He replied in a calm, measured way as if listing facts into a ledger. "I showed you my ticket," he said. "My ID. What more do you require?" Nicole's face did not waver. She offered a smile that was cold and precise, a sculpted thing that held judgment like a practiced posture. 30 seconds before the scene had been ordinary. Passengers wandering in with limbs full of carry-ons, seat numbers blinking above cushion headrests, a soft ambient hum of music and the familiar, muted choreography of boarding, then an edge of sound sharp enough to slice through that normality and to trace back to the start. Marcus had walked into the cabin wearing a fitted black tee and dark jeans, no brand badges, no briefcase, no outward signal of wealth. Only the quiet kind of presence that unsettles people, who are used to measuring others by dress, by polish, by signal. He moved like a man who knew where he belonged, seat C2A, but Nicole did not read presence. She read challenge and stopped him before he could settle. "Sir, this cabin is for priority passengers," she declared. He handed her the pass and she tossed it away like it was junk mail, uninterested even in the name. Brian Chan, assistant crew, strolled over with a half-laugh. "He's in the wrong section," he said, as though. This had been scripted 1,000 times. "I've seen this," and Nicole leaned into procedure. "Unless you show corporate-level clearance, he will be escorted off." Mia Lang, 23, a trainee with her first month of uniform and her first week shadowing Nicole, stood by the galley frozen because she had watched the scanner blink green and seen the manifest flash the name. Carter, Marcus, priority override verified, but fear made her voice thin. "And a woman in." The fourth row began to film quietly, not hiding that she was documenting but doing so with the discreet steadiness of someone who knew the importance of witness. Nicole dropped the boarding pass like it was a cheap flyer. "You can either walk to economy or be walked out," she said. Marcus did not budge, because history lived inside him. In 2006, at a New York airport, a recruiter told him, "You've got potential, but not the polish." A coded dismissal meaning wrong look, wrong skin, and decades later the irony was that this same man now owned 25% of Horizon Airlines while a crew was dragging their legacy into turbulence with old scripts. He remembered that recruiter and the quiet humiliation then, but he also remembered how the world had turned since, and he sat there now with a stillness that was not weakness but the slow gathering of force. MIA's fingers hovered over the call button and she did not press it. Not yet. She had seen the manifest verify his override. She knew she had seen the green, and silence felt like safety. Nicole remained, hip cocked, arms folded, the picture of triumph. Brian leaned in close enough to whisper with the small cruelty of a man enjoying his authority, "You want me to call security now or after he posts something?" Nicole smirked. "Let him post. No one will care." But someone already did care. Row 4, CP. Emma Larson filmed with the calm of a lens hunting a story. Caption typing itself into a future of views. This man showed ID, ticket, stayed calm. Why is he being pushed out? As the camera rolled, the captain, Daniel, mid-40s, clean-shaven, the kind of pilot who had once signed autographs at career days, finally appeared and surveyed the small courtroom of first class. "Sir, this seat has been flagged. Please relocate while we verify your boarding," he said. Marcus looked at him like a patient man looking at a clerk. "You mean the boarding pass?" "You've already torn?" Daniel blinked. Passengers began to murmur. A teenager near the bulkhead asked his mother, "Why are they doing this?" He didn't do anything, and Marcus, with careful movements, reached into his bag and produced a black card, placed it on the fold-out tray. Platinum, nameless, only a stylized wing and the number 25, and that small gesture ignited contempt from Brian. "You people and your props," he snorted. Nicole laughed. "Ridiculous, he probably printed that at Kinko's," and Mia flinched because cruelty in public reveals private cruelty. She stepped forward. "That's against protocol," she said, firmer this time, but Captain Daniel hushed her, not interested in a trainee's courage. "Mia, not now," and yet she persisted. "The scanner went green," she pleaded. "He's on the manifest, his name is on the override list." And the cabin held its breath as if hearing a distant thunder now rolling closer. Marcus remained quiet, the count inside him ticking as their time to act properly evaporated like runway fog. Nicole slammed the tray table up with the heel of her palm, cards still exposed. Enough with the games, she hissed, then without warning reached for his bag, a violent, presumptive touch that drew gasps and a sharp voice from Emma. Don't touch him, and too late. Nicole yanked the satchel into Brian's arms, who laughed, a low theatrical sound. Let's see what our VIP brought, fake IDs. Stolen vouchers, he mocked. Mia stepped forward again, voice firmer. Now that's against protocol. But Nicole rebuked her for being a trainee. Learn to follow, she snapped, and Daniel raised a hand as though maintaining order in a courtroom. Security's been called. If he has nothing to hide, he won't mind a few questions. And still Marcus stayed composed, looking first at Daniel and then Nicole. Standing with the unhurried gravity of someone who has endured indignity and decided it would end with his breathing. You invaded my space, you took my property, and now you escalate a situation that could have ended badly. He said simply, I apologize, and Nicole crossed her arms as if shielding herself from the truth. You think the tone scares me? No, Marcus replied. I think it reveals you, and a ripple of reaction tore through row 3. Then Linda Walsh, security, uniform crisp and authority palpable, stepped in. Step back, sir, you're obstructing crew operations, she ordered, and Marcus turned to her. Slow enough for every witness to see. I am seated. I have not moved. They tore my boarding pass. They took my bag. They called me a fraud. Now they threaten to remove me, and Linda's jaw tightened, non-compliance hanging heavy in her face. But the worst words, you don't belong in first class, did not come from Linda. They came from Brian, loud and smug and revealing the rot, and the cabin exhaled a disgusted sound as Mia gasped. Emma whispered. He said it, and someone in row 5 hit record, another lens joining a chorus of witnesses. Marcus did not blink. He looked down and then up at Linda and spoke the words they should have feared from the start and which changed the room's current. Rachel, he said into his AirPods, activate phase 1, loop in Sarah, James, and David, and a voice answered, cool and immediate, confirming that the board was listening. Nicole paled and Brian froze. Daniel stepped back as reality reconfigured itself. Marcus continued. You touched what didn't belong to you, and now I will do the same. And at that sentence the plane shifted its center of gravity not by shouting but because a man in 2A had spoken like someone who owned the sky, and the cabin inhaled and held as Marcus, calm and final, made the air crackle. Brian still gripped the satchel as though evidence had become ballast, and Nicole, trying to reclaim ground, demanded whether a phone call could change anything, whether the board listening mattered, and Marcus did not need to answer because Rachel put them on speaker and the AirPods broadcast into the cabin. Confirmed, James Thompson, Sarah Lee, and David Ortega live, CEO override protocol activated at 6:08 p.m. Eastern. This conversation is now being recorded. Then James's clipped voice authorized Marcus with full executive authority to proceed. And Nicole's posture betrayed retreat with a half step back. Daniel squinted, the name clicking into place, and suddenly the man in a black tee was visible in a way the crew had refused to see. Marcus Carter, founder, billionaire, 25% shareholder of the airline they served, and the cabin's collective processing did what the company's training should have done, recognized him, and Emma's astonished whisper split the air. Oh my God, he owns the airline. Brian's laugh died and he dropped the satchel. Mia breathed shakily. Linda stiffened and said I wasn't informed of any, and Marcus cut through the excuses. You weren't informed because you weren't supposed to be. Your job is to protect passengers, not profiles. And when Nicole reached for the intercom insisting FAA protocol could not be overridden, Marcus raised an eyebrow. You tore my boarding pass, seized my belongings, called me a liar and a threat, he said. You did it in front of 100 witnesses while standing in a seat that reports to my board. And Daniel stammered that they didn't know because he wasn't wearing a suit, which was the truth and the indictment in one dismissive sentence. I didn't fit your image of power, so you tried to shrink mine. And the cabin, once background noise, became the active jury as murmurs rose. An older man in a grey blazer spoke up about quiet bias. A woman told of her father being stopped many times, and a teenager leaned forward to ask, Sir, are you really the CEO? Marcus nodded, and the boy whispered thanks for not staying quiet, and Marcus, looking at them all, said quietly, This isn't about me. It's about a culture that assumes power wears a suit and never sweats, and he stood and tapped his chest. This uniform is cotton, not armor, and I shouldn't have to wear a title to be treated like a human. Then he surprised everyone by turning to Mia and acknowledging her courage. You knew the truth, you didn't whisper it. You stood in it. And she, with glassy eyes, admitted she could not watch it happen again, and Marcus promised it would not on his flights, not in his company. Then to the cabin he declared that they were not merely replacing a crew but resetting the altitude of respect, and he named consequences. Nicole Foster relieved for racial profiling and FAA ethics violations. Brian Chan terminated for complicity and tampering. Captain Daniel Pierce under investigation. Linda reassigned to be shadowed and retrained, all under live board oversight and HR monitoring as Rachel confirmed emergency authority and new crew logistics over the cabin's PA. The plane's atmosphere changed from tense to righteous. Passengers shifted from spectators to witnesses who had become changemakers as one by one they stood. A wave of principal rolling through first class. People who had seen it now acting, and Mia stepped beside Marcus saying, "You deserve better, sir." "We all do," and Marcus, nodding to the moment, ordered the flight grounded, the crew replaced, and a full compliance report compiled. And when the immediate action was complete, the ripple moved outward. Emma's video hit viral numbers within an hour. Civil rights groups amplified the clip. Social feeds stitched the moment into short-form fury and long-form conversation. And back at Horizon's HQ, the executive floor lit with alerts while Marcus refused PR deflection and instead dictated one plain sentence to appear on every terminal screen. Starting today, Horizon Airlines will no longer define professionalism by suit, skin, or silence, and that blunt proclamation birthed an avalanche of confessionals from pilots benched for dreadlocks, baggage handlers who admitted coded policies for non-standard elites, and dozens of staff reports reopened and audited. Operation Altitude launched. Every flagged incident reviewed. Every suppressed complaint unearthed. A new channel created for frontline voices to reach board ears. Audio flags and facial audit logs implemented. And a new accountability tier installed so uniforms do not confer immunity. The company shook as managers resigned and trainees like Mia were promoted to trainers for bias response while those who had erred were confronted with their own legacies. Tanya Brooks from Row 8. A former ground crew member who had filed a complaint 2 years prior about a family denied boarding for a funeral, heard her story found and righted, and Marcus, who had once been told to walk away and had carried that silence, now read a handwritten letter from a 2006 recruiter confessing her part in that coded dismissal and offering to help undo the harm. And in the quiet that followed, Marcus stood before his board and said, "We don't fix systems by blaming people. We fix them by believing the ones they ignored." And within weeks the company posted unadorned footage of the event. Training rolled out to dozens of bases. Zara and Emma and Mia took roles reshaping policy and culture, and Marcus framed a new corporate ethic. No suit, no problem. Meaning if appearance is your only standard, you do not belong here. And across terminals gate agents paused before policing shoes and silence. Because a man had chosen to remain in a seat and in that refusal forced the system to look at itself. Flights later ran with new crews briefed not to profile. Passengers who had once been asked to prove their right to a chair now settled without the pretense of borrowed dignity. And a woman in her 60s on Flight 918, 3 weeks after 273, stepped onto a plane with no one asking twice for ID, slid into first class not to be tested but simply to be seated, and she breathed like someone finally allowed to rest. Marcus walked through airports like any other person. No entourage, no fanfare, and his quiet had become contagious. Crew members applied, teenagers watched, and learned courage. And when he finally spoke publicly, he did so without spectacle, saying simply that he had been asked to move many times because he was tired of leaving when he should have stayed. And the movement he started was not about him but about making the sky fair for everyone. Flight 273 became the catalyst, the story that would not revert to silence. A truth that moved from a filmed clip to policy to corporate soul-searching. And as Marcus sat once more into seat 2A on a flight marking the anniversary, wearing the same black crew neck and worn sneakers, the cabin offered not applause but recognition. A man in a black shirt occupying a chair that needed no defense, engines rumbling, wheels lifting, and Marcus closing his eyes not because he could rest now but because for the first time he did not have to brace for the moment everything would once again go wrong. He had made sure it would not, because justice, at times, does not roar. Sometimes it simply sits and refuses to move. You need to step back now. The command didn't waver. It carried the authority of inevitability, sharp as lightning in a still sky. Nicole Foster, lead flight attendant of Horizon Airlines Flight 173, stood like a sentinel in the first-class aisle, her posture rigid, every movement precise, every intention clear. Her eyes locked onto the man who had just settled into seat 2A. There was no whispering in her tone. The cabin heard her distinctly. The pause that followed was heavy, like the charged stillness before a storm releases its fury. Marcus Carter didn't flinch. "I showed you my ticket," he said calmly. "I showed you my ID. What else do you require?" Nicole Foster's eyes remained unwavering, her lips curled in a cold, measured smile, one that suggested this was not a mere interaction, this was a challenge. 30 seconds earlier, everything had seemed normal. Passengers drifted along the aisle, leather seats gleaming beneath the soft overhead lighting, subtle hums of ambient music filling the air. Boarding was in motion, ordinary, unremarkable. And then he appeared. Marcus Carter. Fitted black tee, dark jeans, no logos, no briefcase, no flashy indication of wealth or power, just presence. The quiet kind, the kind that unsettles those who thrive on appearances and assumptions. He moved with an effortless certainty towards seat 2A. Nicole didn't perceive presence, she perceived defiance. "Sir, this cabin is reserved for priority passengers," she said sharply. He handed over his boarding pass. She didn't even glance at the name. Before any conversation could follow, Brian Chan, assistant crew, approached, smirking slightly. "He's in the wrong section," he remarked lightly, as though humor could veil incompetence. Nicole's gaze cut through him. "Unless you provide corporate-level clearance, you will be escorted off this aircraft," she said firmly. Mia Lang, a 23-year-old trainee, froze near the galley. She had witnessed the scanner flash green. She knew the name, but fear had stolen her voice. A woman in seat 4C quietly started recording. Nicole dropped the pass, dismissing it as though it were an inconsequential flyer. "Walk to economy, or be walked out," she said. Marcus didn't flinch. He remembered 2006, New York Airport, a recruiter for a regional airline telling him, "You've got potential, but not the polish." Wrong look, wrong skin. Now, nearly 2 decades later, he held 25% of Horizon Airlines, and the crew had just dragged their legacy into turbulence. Mia Lang hovered near the call button, unsure, first month in uniform, first week shadowing Nicole. She had seen the pass turn green, the manifest confirmed the name, Carter, Marcus, priority override verified. She knew it, but silence felt safer. Nicole's stance remained authoritative, hip cocked, arms folded, a posture of victory. Brian leaned toward her. "Call security now, or wait until he posts online." Nicole smirked. "Let him post. Nobody will care." But someone already did. Row 4. Emma Larson. Still recording quietly, her lens capturing not just Marcus, but the crew. Her caption, "This man showed ID, ticket, stayed calm. Why is he being pushed out?" The murmurs began. Daniel, the captain, appeared mid-40s, clean-shaven, approachable, the kind who signed autographs at career days. "Sir, this seat has been flagged," he said. "Please relocate until boarding status is verified." Marcus's calm was unbroken. "You mean the boarding pass you already tore?" he asked evenly. Passengers murmured louder. Teenagers leaned toward parents. Whispers of injustice floated through the cabin. Marcus reached calmly into his bag, no sudden movements, and produced a black card. Platinum, nameless, just stylized wings, number 25. Brian snorted, dismissive. "Probably printed at Kinko's," he muttered. Nicole chuckled, but the tension remained palpable. Mia flinched. That was too much for a trainee to witness, even from a safe distance. Marcus remained still. Nicole stepped forward, reaching toward his bag. "Don't touch him," Emma shouted. But it was too late. Nicole yanked his satchel off the seat and handed it to Brian theatrically. Mia stepped in again, firmer. "Now that's against protocol." Nicole dismissed her. "You're a trainee. Learn to follow." Daniel attempted to intervene, commanding order like a judge. Security had been called. Marcus stood, measured, deliberate. "You've invaded my space, seized my property, escalated unnecessarily. I apologize." Gasps rippled. Linda Walsh, security officer, uniform crisp, authority absolute. Approached. "Step back, sir. You are obstructing crew operations." Marcus's voice calm. "I am seated. I have not moved. My bag has been taken. My boarding pass torn. I've been accused falsely. And now you threaten removal." Linda's jaw clenched. Then Brian, too loud, too smug, added, "You don't belong in first class." MIA's audible gasp. Emma whispered, "He said it. He really said it." The cabin's attention sharpened. Marcus, unfazed, spoke into his AirPods. "Rachel, activate phase 1. Loop Sarah, James, David." Voices responded promptly, already online. The board was listening, Nicole paled. Brian froze. Daniel stepped back. Marcus's calm authority shifted the plane's power, not by shouting, but by ownership. Nicole attempted to regain control. This is ridiculous. A phone call won't change anything. Marcus interrupted. Rachel put them on speaker. AirPods broadcast through the cabin. CEO override protocol activated. Emergency authority confirmed. Recording live. James's calm, clipped voice. Marcus, full executive authority granted. Proceed. Nicole stepped back. Daniel realized, recognition dawning. The man in the black tee, the quiet one, the one who had been invisible, Marcus Carter, founder. Billionaire, 25% shareholder of the airline. Emma whispered, "Oh my God, he owns the airline." Brian dropped the satchel. Mia exhaled shakily. Linda stiffened. Marcus remained calm. Nicole tried the intercom. Active flight zone. FAA protocol. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You tore my boarding pass. Seized my belongings. Called me a liar. All before 100+ witnesses. This seat reports to my board." Daniel stepped forward. "We didn't know," Marcus cut in. "You should have." Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Linda, security officer. "You still want me removed?" She hesitated, stepped back. Emma whispered, "He's not just a passenger. He runs the plane." The ripple began. First Mia, then Emma, then passengers, standing not in protest, but principle. Recognition, not celebration. Marcus turned to Mia. "You knew the truth. You stood in it." She nodded, glassy-eyed. Marcus, ground this flight. Replace the entire crew. Every one of them. Rachel confirmed, live. Daniel sagged. Brian left silently. Marcus returned to 2A, not defiant, just finished. The cabin remained frozen in a strange mixture of awe, tension, and disbelief. Marcus Carter sat in seat 2A as though the air itself belonged to him. Every passenger, every crew member, every inch of first class seemed to bend toward the weight of his presence. Nicole Foster, now realizing the magnitude of the mistake, tried to compose herself. Her polished veneer, once impenetrable, was cracking under the gravity of the truth she had failed to see. Brian Chan's smirk had vanished. The theatrics that had given him a sense of superiority now seemed absurd, almost pathetic. His arms hung loosely at his sides, and he avoided eye contact with Marcus. The satchel he had grabbed earlier rested on his lap, a silent reminder of his premature assumption of authority. Daniel Pierce, the captain, swallowed hard. Every fiber of his being screamed protocol. But this was no ordinary passenger. Marcus's calm authority carried with it a command that no uniform, no title, no air of seniority could override. The captain finally nodded, acknowledging silently that he had underestimated the weight of experience and presence over appearances. Mia Lang, trainee and witness to the unfolding drama, slowly moved to stand beside Marcus. Her breath was still shaky, but her posture was firm. For the first time, she felt the power of truth reinforced by authority, and the courage it inspired in her. "Sir," she said quietly, you didn't have to do this." Marcus turned slightly, meeting her gaze. "Mia, I didn't just stay seated for me. I stayed seated for every person who has ever been told they didn't belong. This isn't about a seat, it's about principle." His voice, calm and deliberate, carried through the cabin without amplification, yet every word resonated. The murmurs of passengers grew into conversations, whispered but powerful. Voices once silenced by habit, expectation, or fear were now being heard. A man in row 6, middle-aged, quietly distinguished, leaned forward. "He didn't have to stay," he muttered. "But he did. That changes everything." A woman across the aisle nodded in agreement, her eyes glistening. "My father," she said. "He was stopped countless times. Never raised his voice. This is justice." Marcus's attention returned to the crew. Nicole Foster, Brian Chan, Daniel Pierce, Linda Walsh, they all represented the old system, one that judged authority by image, skin, and assumptions. Marcus spoke, calm but unyielding. "Every action you've taken here today has consequences. Protocol is not an excuse for bias. Your judgments were flawed. Your actions will be corrected." The words landed like a controlled detonation. reverberating through the cabin. Nicole, still in disbelief, opened her mouth to argue, but no words emerged. Brian shifted uncomfortably. Daniel tried to interject, but Marcus held up a hand, silencing him with the authority of someone who had already endured decades of assumptions and misjudgment. Rachel, Marcus's assistant, confirmed through the AirPods, projecting her voice discreetly but clearly into the cabin. Board directive confirmed. Emergency authority granted. Crew replacement and compliance audit initiated. The cabin's atmosphere changed immediately. The weight of accountability, once abstract, was now palpable and immediate. Marcus stood slowly, deliberate, each movement purposeful, each step measured. The cabin was silent. Every passenger and crew member instinctively understood that this was a pivotal moment. He addressed the crew individually, his tone even, measured, unassailable. "Nicole Foster," he said, voice steady. "Relief of duty effective immediately. Reason: racial profiling, violation of FAA ethics, and interference with a verified executive passenger. Your badge will be deactivated before landing." Nicole's jaw clenched, a mixture of shock and disbelief. She said nothing, unable to summon the words that might salvage dignity or authority. Marcus's words left no space for defense. "Brian Chan," Marcus continued, unhurried, deliberate. "Complicit misconduct, verbal bias, and attempted tampering with passenger property. You are terminated. HR will reach out regarding severance eligibility." Brian's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Daniel Pierce, the captain, was next. "Your failure to recognize verified authority, to protect crew and passenger integrity, will be investigated. You reinforce misconduct instead of mitigating it. You are under review." Linda Walsh, security officer, stood tense. Marcus addressed her calmly. "You were tasked to protect passengers, not profiles. You may continue service under supervision, but first, you will undergo bias and compliance retraining." The cabin exhaled collectively. It was a silent recognition, not relief, not celebration, but acknowledgement of justice in real time. Passengers who had been spectators now understood the depth of the wrongs corrected, the authority exercised with responsibility, and the culture being reset before their eyes. Emma Larson, who had captured the unfolding events on a phone, whispered to herself, "He didn't create chaos. He endured it." Mia Lang's eyes were wide, her hands slightly trembling, yet her stance reflected newfound respect and understanding. Marcus acknowledged her silently, a small nod, a quiet reinforcement of the lesson she had internalized. Marcus returned to his seat in 2A, not as an act of defiance, but as a statement of authority and restoration. "Ground this flight," he instructed Rachel. "Replace the entire crew. Every one of them." Rachel's voice, clear and immediate, confirmed, "New crew at gate. Compliance audit in progress. Passengers will be informed." The passengers, once passive observers, now realized they were witnessing a profound shift in corporate accountability. Their eyes, previously trained to see the uniform, now recognized principle and authority in presence and action. Marcus's measured responses transformed the cabin into a microcosm of justice and change, the seat 2A becoming more than a chair. It was a symbol. For 15 minutes, the cabin atmosphere shifted from tension to transformation. Passengers murmured among themselves, a quiet ripple effect that acknowledged both what had occurred and what would change henceforth. Mia Lang, promoted to acting lead for the flight, absorbed the magnitude of the lesson in real time. Rachel projected the board directive, confirming Marcus's authority to implement systemic reviews across the airline. Marcus addressed the cabin, his voice low but firm. "Horizon Airlines will conduct Operation Altitude, auditing every flagged incident, every suppressed complaint, and every case erased or mishandled due to bias. Flight attendants who dismiss passenger concerns based on appearance will be reviewed. Supervisors who ignore trainees will be suspended. Captains overriding protocols to protect optics over ethics will be grounded." Names appeared on the shared manifest. Brian Chan, terminated. Nicole Foster, permanently banned. Daniel Pierce, under investigation. Linda Walsh, reassigned, shadowing Mia for 3 months. Uniform suspended until completion of retraining. The systemic implications were immediate and public. Passengers, once silent, now nodded in recognition. The realization was clear. Accountability had arrived at cruising altitude, long before the plane itself took flight. The ripple continued. Tanya Brooks, a former ground crew member, quietly observed from row 8. 2 years prior, her report about discriminatory boarding procedures had been ignored. Now, she finally witnessed acknowledgement and corrective action. Marcus acknowledged her with a quiet nod. "Thank you for speaking up. You will not be erased this time." Rachel confirmed, locating the 2025 report, previously marked inconclusive. The silence of accountability now replaced fear with focus, and the narrative shifted from reaction to reform.